Today we are talking about real, true life experiences of people who played the Three Kings ritual. I will be reading these stories off. Suddenly, the candle I had started flickering. I'm not talking about a little bit either. I was legitimately getting scared it was going to go out. It looked like it was dancing around and was casting strange shadows all around me. Immediately after, I felt two distinct mental presences crash into me. From the left side, I felt an overwhelming sense of anger, depression, hate, and what generally felt like evil incarnate. From the right came these feelings of happiness, joy, and kindness, and was the complete opposite of the opposing force. It felt like I was no longer one person, but was instead three entities fighting it out inside of my body. I remember feeling squished inside my own body, and I was starting to shake. It was like nothing I'd ever felt before. I at one point was sure I was going to be pushed out of my own body and could feel what can only be described as ego-death. Which really feels like the iconic battle of, the angel on your shoulder, the devil on your other shoulder. But in this case, you're having them in the mirrors, and you're basically pulling those identities separate from yourself, which is why you're having the three separations of your ego. So that's a little scary, but not exactly demonic evil spirits. It's more just yourself in that instance. Out of the corner of my eye, the mirror to my right looked like there were water droplets falling down it, like the windshield of a car during a downpour. I felt a tear fall down my cheek. I'm not sure if it was because I was terrified or because of the sheer sadness that filled the room. From the corner of my eye, I noticed that the mirror on the left looked lighter somehow. The only way I know how to explain it is when you turn the brightness up too high on your computer screen. Terrified, I made sure to keep looking forward at the wall. The next thing I remember is getting splashed with an entire bucket of cold water. My safety person had called my name without a response, then called my cell phone several times with no answer, then eventually came into the room and brought me back to reality with the bucket of water. According to them, I was sitting straight ahead with the candle clutched in my left hand and my right hand in front of me at face level, like I was holding it against someone else's. I woke up at 3:30 on the dot to the blast of power metal. I lit my candle and went into the studio, my sister well aware of my situation. The chairs had been set up in the space between two large type shelves. I sat down and assumed the position. Make note that facing north was facing the exit of the two shelves and that I have a phobia of the dark. So I was pretty good with the little light from the candle there, making it hard to see, but not impossible. After a while, I heard crying coming from my left side. It was mock crying, like when you're insulting someone for whining. I heard from the left someone telling them to cut it out. Then in the most effed up voice, I heard, "Come over here and make me stop screaming." That nightmare is actually a guilt thing. One of my friends got pregnant about a year ago. She was 16 and I was 13 at the time. Now, I wasn't the dad or anything. I'm still a virgin. She wanted to get an abortion and I tried to stay out of it. Since I've had nightmares from time to time that end with that little back and forth because I feel bad for not urging her against it. So hearing that freaked me the F out. But I'm a bold type, so I responded with something to the extent of, "I don't hear crying, just a little bee." There was silence for about 20 minutes. Now everything felt like it was floating the moment I had sat down. But I didn't really notice until now. And then I noticed just how dark it was. I closed my eyes and waited till I heard my sister call my name, all the while enduring the endless silence and the black engulfing me. So I'm new to this whole Redditing thing here, but I'm a big fan of creepypastas. I listen to Creeps McPasta and Mr. Creepypasta mostly, and I know most of this stuff is fake, but when I heard about Three Kings, I just had to try it, even if it was just for the LOL factor. Now, before I go any further, let me introduce myself a little. I'm an atheist, have been since I was 13, and having gone to church since I was little. I don't take stock in any of this paranormal stuff either. Just consider it another fun avenue in which we can all spook ourselves. But ever since I tried this Three Kings thing, I'm not sure where I stand. I did this experiment at my girlfriend's house. She has a dance room right outside her room with the mirror wall positioned on the south wall, while the wall towards the north was blank. We spent the evening setting up the dance room, watched a nice movie afterwards, and then went to bed in a guest room downstairs. She was very clear about how she didn't want to be sleeping in the room next to supernatural stuff. Now, after this point, it'll get a bit hard to believe for some of you, especially because none of you guys seem like the religious type. Blood, magic, demons, cleansing rituals, tarot, etc. So 3:30 I wake up to the sound of Weird Al playing polka music. I figured it'd be the best to go into this smiling. Me and my girl go upstairs, and she waits outside while I go in and take my seat, with the lit candle, of course. The room's longer than it is wide, and with the seat at the back, it was impossible to see the door through all the black. After a few minutes of nothing happening, I hear something from the darkness towards the door. It's faint singing in a language I can't understand, and the blackness turns into a mass of shadows that look like people. They're all marching from the right to the left, like they're on parade, and as they pass, I can't help but feel elated. After a couple of minutes of this going on, I noticed a second noise. From the chair to my right was the sound of someone writing something down, with a scratchy sound too, like someone using one of those old quill pens. I wanted to ask what it was writing down, but I was too afraid of the answer to go through with it, especially when the room was full of moving shadows, even if they did look like they were rejoicing. The scribbling on my right ceased, and then a voice from the chair on my left spoke up. It said my name and then started listing off every good deed I'd ever done in my life. Big, small, valiant, accidental, all of them. Even ones I'd done when I was a little boy and forgotten about. And as the voice listed these things off, the writing on my right resumed. In case anyone's wondering why I've been gender neutral about the voice, it's because I couldn't tell what gender it was. Like every nanosecond it was switching between male and female, the tone was something soothing, but the constant switching still gave me something of a migraine by the time this was all over. After it got through listing all the good deeds, and went over all the shameful things I'd done in the past as well, each one that went by made me feel pretty bad. Even small things like when I was 5 and stole a chocolate bar from my sister's Halloween candy. The thing on my right was still keeping track, or at least I assumed that's what it was doing, and I felt like I wanted to grab whatever it was writing in and rip out the pages, even though because every other sense in my brain was telling me that it was a terrible idea. After it finished listing everything, it started speaking to me directly. Like, you know how a guidance counselor in high school talks to someone about how to fix their grades or get into a college? It kind of did that. It encouraged me to stay off drugs and alcohol, except for when it's absolutely necessary for either. Told me that it didn't mind if I skipped church on Sundays as long as I did more charity work. And it told me to call my parents more often. They'd been worried sick about how I've been doing. When my girlfriend called for me, both voices said goodbye. The shadows and music faded away, and I heard the chairs scrape against the wood floor. My girlfriend came in, asked how I was, and then we went back to bed. I didn't tell her exactly what happened, because saying, "I think God just told me to straighten up," in the South can lead to bad things. So what the hell just happened? Did I talk to God? Am I nuts? Maybe it was a pair of spirits, demons, supernatural beings playing some sort of prank on me. I don't know what to believe after this. Also, should I have the house cleansed, exorcised, washed? I'm not sure if I should do that after every supernatural experience or just when something doesn't go right. Note, if anyone knows what language Baba Yetu is and what it means, that'd be really helpful. It was part of what I could make out from the faint singing and the only part I could accurately phonetically announce. So someone replied back to this story with a really interesting post, which ties into what I said from the first story, that it's kind of like your ego split into 3. In this case, they are confirming that it would be your id and your superego, which I didn't go into that because, I mean, it all basically sounds like your actual ego, at least to me, but I'm not super knowledgeable about psychology. But I'll read that comment because it's really interesting. First, you should know that this is a psychological experience and not a supernatural one. At least, it is not intended to be. The original poster who created this ritual stated himself that the pure-snickery little tasks you have to perform are all intended to get you into the right mindset. The 3 keens are supposed to represent your superego and id, with you as the ego in the center, the 3rd keen. It's an introspective exercise that has produced a lot of interesting results. I suppose if you're a follower of Lavarian philosophy, that the discovery of yourself is the equivalent of meeting your God, in the sense that you're meeting your maker, deconstructed into separate aspects for better analysis. Kabbalist rabbi have similar results with their transcendental journeys, and certain branches of Buddhism encourage similar self-discovery through meditation. Just a thought, or several, for you to mull over. You are responsible for the shaping of who you are, and as an individual, despite the fact that you aren't responsible for how your cells combine to create your body. So basically, this person is just confirming that this is basically a type of introspective meditation where you kind of separate the aspects of yourself. Which is, I think, what I basically said in my video anyways, is that it sounds like, you know, it's more introspective. Now, could you call an evil spirit because of having the mindset that these are evil spirits coming out of the mirrors? Yeah. But more realistically, even if it is portrayed as an evil spirit, it's probably still a part of your mind. You know what I mean? With manifestation, anything is possible, but I don't know, it's a thin line between if, you know, you bring forth a real evil spirit or just an aspect of yourself, your mind's creation, that is seeming to be a real evil spirit, if that makes sense. So someone else commented on this post, talking about the whole God, you know, religious kind of side to this. They said, you are the second person I have come across that stated on their left side was some kind of guiding or angelic spirit. The other person, however, was being told by this thing not to look to the right, as he was waiting for this guy to look to the right at the demonic jinn that was sitting there waiting to strike. This guy described how his brother did the ritual, by the way. While his brother questioned the guiding spirit, and it tried not to get angry at him, but was really stern about how he shouldn't look over his right shoulder and how he needed to leave the room. Now, when he questioned the entity more, it kept telling him that he was waiting for him to look and how he shouldn't look. Unfortunately, it was the story of curiosity killed the cat, as my brother looked over his right shoulder and saw this thing on the way out, and is now being oppressed and attacked by this thing. The more I come across this and doorways to the mind, the more it seems to be some kind of bait or trap to lure people in. Mirrors are known to be portals to the other side as well. Which obviously, I mean, if the rules say don't look in the mirror, look straight ahead only, just because the thing's telling you to look over your shoulder, you shouldn't look over your shoulder. It's pretty clear, right, in the instructions that that's a no-no. On to another story. So let me start by saying I have never done anything like this before and had no idea what to expect. But I have always been more guts than brains, so I figured, what the hell, give it a shot. I don't have a basement in my apartment, so I had to go to my dad's house. I set everything up earlier in the afternoon. 3 wooden armless chairs, 2 big mirrors I borrowed from my stepmother. My power object was a watch from my grandfather. I did deviate from the setup, but only just a little. I did set the bucket and mug of water in the floor, but I had no idea what to do with it. I used a small box fan I placed several feet behind me on low, which was still rather strong. I used a 3-inch pillar candle on a plate for my candle. I got nervous and completely forgot my cell phone, so much for that backup. The basement itself is very large. It extends almost the entire length of the house and is unfinished, so it's bare cement and one room is framed but not yet drywalled. There are no windows. It still has that familiar basement feel. Anyway, I sat up like I said and tried to get some sleep on the couch while my girlfriend painted. My alarm woke me up at 3:30 and I lit my candle in darkness and made my way down the steps to the basement. She sat by the door at the top of the stairs and read while I went in. When I went down the stairs, I was extremely nervous and excited, and I forced myself to stare at my hands and the candle flickering between them and nothing else. Immediately when I entered, I felt like someone was in the room with me, a definite presence. I made my way to my throne, being very careful not to knock anything over or to look at the mirrors, and took my seat between the 2 mirrors and stared directly ahead into the darkness. I sat there very still for several minutes, staring into the darkness and trying to concentrate while the candles flickered in my hands. The dim light made it feel like everything around me was jumping and moving, and I kept seeing my reflection dancing in the mirror in my peripheral. Shortly thereafter, I started to feel as if the room had no walls. There was a sense of emptiness, like I was in the middle of a never-ending blackness. I sat there trying not to get freaked out by the feeling of openness when I started seeing movement in the mirrors on both sides of me. They moved even when I didn't, and when I shielded my eyes from the candle trying to emanate the glowing under my face, they still moved. At this point, I began to get really nervous and focused really hard, trying to make sense of the things I was seeing in my peripheral and fighting the urge to just look, focusing so hard on my peripheral. And the steady hum of the fan behind me started to give me a headache. I was trying so hard to see without looking that I didn't notice at first when I started hearing the murmuring. It didn't sound like whispering. It sounded more like listening to a conversation through a pillow, and I don't know how long I heard it before I realized it wasn't just in my head. At first I thought I was just imagining it, and I leaned forward trying to hear better, because for some reason it made sense at the time. But the fan sounded like a hurricane, and I felt like I couldn't hear over it. I kept seeing movement in the glass as I was leaning forward, and I resist the urge to look. I asked if I was alone, and the murmuring went silent. I waited several minutes in silence on the edge of my seat. I don't think I breathed. I resisted the urge to bolt up the stairs like a little kid. "Who am I talking to?" I asked. "Someone who knows," came from my left. "Yourself," came from my right. Both answers were clear as a bell. I seriously got the creeps and considered putting the candle out, but instead, "Someone who knows what?" I asked. I heard some more murmuring coming from both sides, both talking over each other, and I couldn't make out anything that was said except, "Why you're here." The movement in the glass seemed to increase on both sides. It seemed to be not just moving in, but coming out of the glass toward me on my left, and I leaned away a little and almost tipped my chair over. I started hearing things around me in the room, breathing, ticking, a knock here and there, and while I was listening to it go on all around me and feeling surrounded, they bickered with each other. Sometimes I wasn't even sure what about, except that they were talking about me, and the one on my left knew things I had never told anyone. My doubts about faith, the mean things I had said to friends in fights, etc., and more so. Things I wouldn't even repeat here. I felt like the one on my left was trying to, lure me from my chair and wanted to show me things. At a certain point, I felt like something was right behind me, and I felt like the conversation was getting further away from me. I leaned forward, straining to hear better, and realized after a few tense minutes that the steady hum of the fan was gone. I don't even remember when it went off. I didn't even notice, except that by the time I did realize, it was getting hot and stuffy. When I noticed the fan was off, I panicked and jumped out of my seat and dropped the candle, at which point it went out. I grabbed the candle and tried to relight it again because I figured it was like bad voodoo for the candle to go out, and I only had a few seconds to light it or something, but it wouldn't light, which freaked me out more. I bolted to the light switch and cut it on the left room. My girlfriend was sitting outside the door waiting for me and asked me what happened, and said she had checked on me a couple times, knocking on the door and calling down to me and heard, "I'm fine." Aside from that, she never heard anything from inside the room. I'm not sure exactly what happened in there, or if I'm crazy. If anyone has questions, feel free to ask and I'll answer as best I can, but that's my experience with the Three Kings. That being said, I'm fascinated. We'll certainly be trying this again soon, with maybe a little less nerves and a little more perspective on what to expect. And if anyone has anything else for me to try, send me the suggestion and I'll do it. It was a crazy experience. Also, in spite of what I have been told, I am just overly curious and I have to know what you see when you look in the mirrors. So I plan on trying this again soon, and I will look in the mirror next time. That being said, Fable, I'm going to do it on my own volition and you have zero responsibility in the outcome. Okay, and then they edited it, adding in some of the things that the mirrors were saying to them. A few years ago, my best friend of over a decade killed himself, and this was the first thing it attacked me with. From the left, "You let him die. It's your fault." Me, "It's not my fault. I didn't know he was in that deep." "Because you never cared about anyone but yourself." "That's not true." "Yes, it is. But that's okay. Come on over here and see him now." "You are going to hell. You are going to burn." "I have faith." From the right, "You can't lie to us." They did have distinct voices. The left one's voice changed occasionally between myself and people I knew, and once a raspy voice. The one on my right had my voice at all times, and spoke almost monotone. I will definitely post what happens next time I try it, and I'm also up for suggestions of anything else I should do. Well, that person, I really hope that they're okay. If they did do that ritual a second time and looked in the mirrors, and if they haven't done it yet, I hope that if they do it, they are okay, because I don't know. Even though I buy into that fact that it is designed to, bring out the parts of your mind and really be an introspective discussion, it still just is better to be cautious than sorry. And especially if you did this ritual and did see things in the mirror, I wouldn't suggest doing it and actually looking in the mirror when the rules say not to do that, or you're going to be pulled into the spirit world. So here we have two stories. We have, it is just a thing in your mind and it's probably safe and actually probably beneficial. And the other, they're creepy and not actually seem paranormal. So anyways, as usual, if you have played this game, if you know any stories, any insights, or just suggestions on what you'd like me to do a video on next, let me know in the comments below. And until next time.